Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we are going to proceed to last chapter for this subject, OBM247, which is the chapter 6. So chapter 6, we are going to discuss about record retention, records retrieval, and also records transfer. Previously in chapter 5, you have learned about 5.1, which is numeric records management, and then 5.2, which is geographic records management, and lastly 5.3, which is the subject records management. Okay, so today we are going to proceed to the last one, chapter 6. And in chapter 6, we need to know the first one is the concept of appraisal and disposition. Okay, number 2, we need to know what is records retention. And the third one, we need to know the records retrieval. Okay, so you need to know the manual charge out and follow up, and also the electronic charge and follow up records. Okay, and next 6.4, we are going to learn about the records transfer, and lastly is the record center. Okay, so the first one, concept of appraisal and disposition. You need to know what is the definition of appraisal and the definition of disposition. So appraisal is the process of determining the value of records for further use and the length of time the value will continue. Okay, in other words, you need to know what type of value that documents have, whether it have what we call administrative value, fiscal value. Okay, and then how long you're going to keep this one. The one is according to the value of the record. And then disposition is the action taken in due course of a consequence of appraisal. For example, the document can need to be destroyed after being used, maybe after 3 years, 5 years, and 6 years. Okay, so then we need to do the next step, which is the disposition. Okay, next one. For this one, still in the topic of disposition and appraisal. It covers the variety of ways in which a department may remove its records from department active record storage by the following action. In other words, it depends on the organization itself. How long do you want to keep the document? When you are going to destroy or dispose the document? Okay, so the following action, the first one is storage in department records room for a period of time and later destroyed when the retention period has expired. Okay, when the record is active record, usually we put the record around us, or in other words, close to us. And then when the record is not active anymore, we put it somewhere further than us, or we put it in the box. For example, the box is one of the storage supply for us to use to keep our record. And then transfer the record center after being kept for a period of time in the department. Okay, and then what are the actions? The transfer the archival unit or archival institution. Okay, this one is more to the historical document that have historical value. Okay, and then making microfilm copies and destroying the original records to save storage space. And lastly, immediate destruction of record with no administrative value, legal value, fiscal value, and historical value. Okay, so for example, what we call the telephone message do not have non-essential type of the record, so we need to destroy after being used. That's for example. Okay, the next one, last one, is destruction after complying with the retention period. Okay, so what is retention period? We are going to learn about this one after this. Okay, in the record disposal schedule of the department. Okay, so usually the record retention period, we have certain schedule how long you are going to keep that one inactive, in the inactive, and also when you are going to dispose that document. Okay, so this is what we call disposal schedule. Okay, so this one is the control document that contain appraisal decision and prescribed disposal action. Okay, next one is record retention. So record retention is the established policy and procedure for determining what documents to keep, where to keep them, and how long these documents are to be kept. Okay, for example, if that document is what we call an active record, we put it close to us. Okay, how long we are going to put to close to us? Maybe around 3 years, and then when the record is no longer active, we need to put it somewhere else further than us. Okay, so a record inventory and analysis should be conducted to obtain information needed to prepare record retention and destruction schedule. Okay, next one is what is a records inventory. So records inventory is actually a detailed listing of an organization's records that includes type of records, okay, volume of file records, location of records, frequency of use. So frequency of use, we can relate this one to the active, inactive, and also the long-term record. Okay, and then the classification system. So another information for records inventory. So the collected information includes the following. For example, names and dates of the record series, the record's location, storage equipment, number of storage containers, records reference rate, and also the records media that include paper, micrographic, electronic, or optical. And then for the records inventory, you need to know that it depends to the record size, whether it is in the form of letter size, legal size, type and checks, and others. And then you need to know the records housing, for example, folders, binders, cassettes, and etc. We have learned this one in chapter 4, the last topic in chapter 4. And then the records value. Yes, the value of record we have vital, important, useful, and non-essential. And lastly is the retention requirement. So, what is the definition of record series? Record series is a group of related records that normally are used and filed as a unit to determine the record retention period. Okay, so this is example of the records inventory worksheet. Okay, I want you to take a look on this one. Okay, so this is the department is the legal department. The date of inventory is 15 January 2005. Okay, and then this is what we call dates of record series. Okay, it will started from January 1st 2002 until January 1st 2005. Number of storage container for this record is 6. Okay, I want you to take a look closely for this one. Can you see this one, record retention period? Okay, so the record retention period, okay, active, again, we have learned this one in chapter 2. Active, usually we put it close to us, okay, in office around 3 years, and then after we are not frequently use the document, we'll consider that one as the inactive. Okay, so for that one is 5 years. So the total years this document in our department, which is the legal department, is 8 years. Okay, so the record retention period, which is scheduled when until case closed. So mostly it will be the inactive for 10 years and the total will be 20 years. Okay, so the destruction date for this document is a schedule to be January 1st, 2045. Okay, so this is what we call records inventory worksheet. Don't worry, we're not going to ask you in detail in this form, but again, you need to know this one. Okay, next one, the records value. Okay, previously we have learned about this one in chapter 2, but you need to know the additional information, the value of the records. Okay, so the first one is non-essential, not worth keeping. What is the difference for this one compared to chapter 2? For this one, we have additional information that how long you are going to keep the document. Okay, we have learned this one in chapter 2. Okay, but this one is additional information about order how long you are going to keep the document. Okay, so for useful record, we know this one as a short-term storage. Why? Because it is up to 3 years. And for important records is long-term storage between 7 to 10 years. And lastly is the vital record. This one is permanent storage. Okay, next one. You have learned also this one in chapter 2 about the accessibility of the records or records activity. But in chapter 6, the different between the in chapter 2 and chapter 3, you have active record, you have inactive record, and also you have long-term record. But in chapter 6, you have archive record. Okay, so for active records, the information is still the same. You access 3 or more times a month located near user. Okay, and in active record, you access less than 15 times a year, stored in less expensive area. But this one is something new. Archive record, you kept for their continuing or historical value, stored in less expensive area, often off-site. Okay, so what happened when you have this type of question? Are you going to answer the answer for chapter 2 or chapter 6? Yes. Both answer will be considered correct. Either you want to answer the archive records for the point number 3, or you are going to answer the long-term record. Okay, next, this is previously we have taken a look on the schedule. So this is what we call records retention schedule. Okay, so this one is a comprehensive list of records indicating the length of time records are to be maintained, transferring inactive records to storage, and destroying records with a short-term value. Okay, so we need to reduce the storage cost and increases the retrieval efficiency. This is what the function of the records retention schedule. And then we transferring and destroying record at a regularly scheduled interval, eliminate clutter and shortens retrieval time. And records retention and destruction timetable are based on the information contained in the records and not on the media itself. Okay, so this one is include electronic, optical, and also micro copies along with paper records. Okay, so this is the records retention schedule. Okay, you need to take a look on this one because you may be asked for this one. So how we are going to calculate this one is the type of record series. Okay, for example, the active is 3 years, inactive is 3 years, and the total you just add up active and inactive and you will get the total years. How about this one? Cause 0. Okay, so it means the document is or the record is just 1 year in your department. And then you have the word P. P means permanent. Why permanent? Because maybe it have what we call a vital information, or maybe has historical or continuing to give what we call for your organization, to have value to your organization. Okay, so you need to take a look how to get the total is active plus inactive. Okay, so this is what we call records retention schedule. Next one, records retrieval. In chapter 2, we have learned about the definition of filing and retrieval. Again, we are going to repeat that one. Retrieval is the process of locating and removing a record or file from storage. So there are 2 ways for you to retrieve the record. The first one is the manual retrieval. The second one is the electronic retrieval. So in manual retrieval, you are removing a record from a storage container by hand. Okay, I do believe when you go to the clinic, some of the clinic, okay, they do not use the what we call computerized. Okay, they use the manual one, and then when you go there, you give usually you give your 4 last digit number of your IC, and then the staff or the employee, they will look for your records either in the storage container or in the wall storage. Okay, so The next one is electronic retrieval, using a computer to see an electronic records on screen in a database or in email messages. Okay, for example, when you go to HEA or HEP, you just give your ID number and then they can retrieve everything about you according to your student ID number. The same thing goes when you go to the banking system. Okay, when you go to the bank, maybe you want to check your account number or you want to withdraw. Okay, so you just give your IC number and then they can retrieve all the information about you according to your IC number. Okay, this is what we call electronic retrieval. The same thing goes when you want to check your fees, your ATM fees. You just key in your student ID number. So this is what we call electronic retrieval and also manual retrieval. However, some of the organization, they are still using the manual retrieval. Okay, the next one is manual charge out and follow up records. Okay, this is quite important and it's very important. You need to know there are five procedures for you to borrowing the paper. Okay, again I repeat, there are 5 procedures for you to borrowing the papers. For the first one is you need to request record and folder. The second one, charging out cards and folder. Number 3, you need to cancel charge out for return and records. And number 4, following up on borrowed record. And lastly, reserving records. Okay, so we are going to learn in detail one by one this procedure for borrowing the paper. Okay, so before we proceed to this one, I'm going to recap back what we have learned before. Okay, so this is what we call example of the number. You can see this one. This is what we call primary guide. Okay, for example, A is primary guide, and also this one is application is secondary guide. Okay, so can you see this one, out guide? This is what we are going to discuss after this. Out guide, can you see OUT, out, the green one? This means someone is borrowing a document or a folder. Okay, this is out guide. So I'm going to give you another example. Okay, can you see this one? In letter F, you have out. So this is what we call out guide. Someone is borrowing the document or the folder. Okay, the F folder. Okay, so recap back. So again, we are going to have 5 procedures, and we are going to discuss this one by one because there's a lot in each procedure for borrowing paper. So let's take a look on procedure number 1. So number 1, we need to request records and folder. Okay, so in order for you to request records and folder, you need to fill in or fill out the requisition form. Okay, so the requisition form is a written request for a record or information from a record. So it may be made by over the telephone, in person, or in writing. So this is example of the record request. For example, you want to use the requisition form. So you need to put the name of the record, date on record, date to be written, how long you're going to borrow that paper. Maybe for example 5 days, 2 days, and the date you borrow the record, and the requested name, because it is you who borrowed the paper. You need to put your name, your extension, your email, and department. Why do we need this? Okay, because if someone want to use the same document, we can recall or we can follow up that the document is with you. Okay, that's why we need the information for this one. Okay, so place white copy into the folder and place blue copy into particular file. So actually we need to have 2 copies. We're going to learn about this later on. Okay, now, so it's quite important in procedure in number 2, because in charging out records and folder, okay, charging out is recorded information that accounts for records that are removed of the file. So we have previously taken a look on the folder, on the folder that have been borrowed. There's a word out there. Okay, so there are 4 methods. Again, I repeat, there are 4 methods you need to remember in order for you to charge out. Okay, the first one is out guide. The second one is requisition sheet. The third one is out folder. And lastly, the carrier folder. So now we're still in procedure number 2, but we are going to take a look one by one for the method commonly used to show that you charge out the folder or the document. Okay, so we're going to proceed one by one. The first one is out guide method. Okay, so out guide method is a marker. Marker, or in other word, is what we call, we mark something with the word out. Okay, we have seen before the word out. Okay, mark place in the file to show that a folder or records have been borrowed. Okay, so there are 2 main style of out guide that include out guide with a pocket and out guide with a printed line. So we are going to take a look one by one of this one. The first one, out guide with pocket. Okay, so this orange one, you can see this is the mark for out guide. Okay, OUT, and then you have pocket. This is what we call the pocket. Okay, made by vinyl for durability and reuse, with a pocket in the upper right corner. Okay, usually it has the pocket in the middle or in the upper right corner. Okay, to hold the requisition form. Okay, in step number 1, you need to fill up the requisition form. Okay, so you can use the requisition form to put in this pocket folder. Okay, so this is number 1. We call it is out guide with pocket. You have the word out guide. This is what we call tab. TAB tab. Tab cut is in the middle. What is tab? Okay, you have learned this one in chapter 4. Okay, number 2, out guide with printed lines. Okay, also known as a Manila guide with an out tab. Information filled in the printed lines on the guide includes the name of the borrower, a reference to the borrower material, and the charge out date for the records. Okay, can you see this one? We have the tab cut, which is the word out, but you have this printed line. Okay, so what are the information we put in this one in here? We are going to take a look after this. Okay, so this is an example of the charge out in the printed lines. Okay, can you see this one? This is printed line. This is example, the information that we need to fill out. Okay, so name of the record, date on record, name of the person borrowing, extension or email again, the date borrowed, when you are borrowed the document or a file, due date. Okay, for example, you are going to borrow the file until 26/8 and then 26 August, and then you return that one on 26 August. But for this one, document number 2, you need to return back on 28 August, but again you return this one earlier. But this one, the due date is supposed to be 29 August, but you have overdue. So what happened when you overdue? We need to follow up with that person by giving a notice, and then that person want to extend. Yes, you will be given to extend the document. This is the extended date. Okay, so this is an example of the charge out log. Okay, now we need to proceed to method number 2. Again, you have 4 methods. Okay, in charge out. Method number 2 is requisition sheet. Is a request for records that also serve as a marker place in a folder for charge out papers. Other than you are using the folder that have tab out, you also can use the requisition sheet. This is the second number 2, the method number 2. Okay, so what are the procedures for this one? You need to prepare 2 copies of a requisition sheet. Place 1 copy in the file folder from which you have removed the paper. For example, you are going to borrow a paper in that folder, and then you place a copy of requisition sheet there, so that when a person want to borrow that document, they know that someone is borrowing that document because we have the requisition sheet. Also considered as a marker. Okay, And then you have the second copy in the follow-up file. Again, you have the follow-up file. Why? Because maybe some of you late to return the document, so we can go to the follow-up file to locate where is the document or the folder actually. Okay. The third method is the out folder. So out folder may be used to substitute for a folder that has been removed from the records area. For example, someone is borrowing a folder, not a document in that folder. So you may be substitute with another folder to replace that folder that have been borrowed. Okay. So usually often a distinctive color for quick identification. So for this one, almost the same with the step number 1, out guide. You use the out folder with pocket, and you also can be used out folder with printed lines. Okay, so what are the procedures when you are using out folder with pocket? Okay, so you need to prepare the requisition form in duplicate, place one copy in the pocket, and substitute for the original folder, and then place the second copy in the follow-up file. And the next one, you need to know what are the procedures for using out folder with a printed lines. Okay, you have printed lines for that one. Okay, the first one is you copy the information from requisition form to the printed rule from an outer face of the out folder. And then place the out folder in the original folder. Okay, you have taken the original folder, so you place the out folder as a substitute. Okay, and then place the requisition form in the follow-up file. So the next one is carrier folder. This is the last method, carrier folder method. Okay, so a carrier folder made of heavy manila stock and distinctive color carries folder content to the borrower. So what are the advantages of carrier folder? It is more durable and can withstand extra handling, so it can help remind borrower to return the folder to the records department, and also the original folder remain in the place to accept incoming paper, so the filing can go as usual. For example, if you take the folder, so when someone have a incoming or inward correspondence, you need to put that document in the folder. The folder is not there, so when we have this folder as a substitute, you can make the filing as usual, but you just put in that substitute folder. Okay, now this is step number 3. Okay, we have completed step number 1. We have completed step number 2, which is procedure for charge out that have 4 methods. And then now what we need to do is cancelling charge out for written records. So when you are going to return the records, you need to cancel the charge out. You cannot have that what we call out folder or out guide. Why? Because people will think that someone is still borrowing that paper, even though at the same time you already have returned. That's why you need to cancel the charge out. Okay, so this one happen when papers are returned to the file. The method used in the charge out system determine who cancel charge out, which is come either in 3 ways. Okay, again in 3 ways. The first one, out guide and folder with pocket. Okay, out guide and out folder with printed line. Also the last one is requisition sheets. So these are 3 are the method commonly used for you to charge out. Okay, so you need to cancel this one either in 3 ways. Okay, you need to cancel that this one, so that people will know that the document or the folder is there. Okay, no more being borrowed by someone. Next, number 4. So how you're going to follow up on borrowed record? For example, you're supposed to return the record last week, but what happened? You still borrow that record and you want to extend the record. Okay, so follow up is a check on the return of borrowed record within a reasonable or specific time. Okay, so you need to help to ensure the return of borrowed record. Suppose you be to return today but you did not return, and then when you have all the information in the follow-up folder, you can follow up with that person why he or she did not return the document on the date supposed to be returned. Okay, and then you have time limits. Okay, time limits for borrowed record. Can we borrow the documents as long as we want? No, you don't. Okay, so the length of time that record may remain out of the file area varies with the user's need and company policy, from few hours to several months. Okay, so it varies because of the differences in the value of records or the demand from other borrowers for the same record. For example, you have what we call vital records. Okay, can you borrow that one? No. Okay, vital records. So now this is what we have discussed previously about how long or the time for you to borrow the record. Okay, so when the record has a valuable record, may not be borrowed more than 1 day. But if the record has less valuable record, you may borrow for a period of a week. Okay, so in general, it's better to limit the period of time for return of the record. So the shorter time permitted, the better chance of a timely return of borrowed record. Okay, for example, if you give that person too long to borrow the records, maybe that person forget to return the record. Okay, the same thing goes to you when you are borrowing a book from the library. So it's better for you to time permit. Okay, maybe you want to use the book for 1 week, and then after you have used for 1 week, you just return the book. But again, when you borrow that book for 1 month, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, maybe you have forgotten to return back the book. Okay, so the extended time should be given when the record is still needed by the borrower and should be noted in the original requisition or out form. For example, you want to extend the document, you're supposed to borrow for 1 week, but you did not complete your work yet. So you need to extend, and you need to fill up again the requisition form. Why? Because this requisition form, it has a copy in the follow-up file, so that when another people want to borrow the paper, they know that you are borrowing the document or the folder. Okay, so manual follow-up methods. So how you are going to follow up manually? Yes, by using the telephone call. This is the simple one, or written reminders to request return of the overdue records. Okay, so in order for you to check overdue records, you can use one of these 3 basic methods. Again, you can use one of the 3 basic methods. Okay, we are going to discuss one by one of these 3 basic methods. The first one is scanning the file. Second one is maintaining the charge out log, and the third one is using a follow-up file. Okay, so the first one, scanning the file. How do you scan the file? You scan file for out guides and folder and check the due dates. Just take a look on the folder that have the out guide. Okay, work for relatively small and inactive filing system. That's the first one. The second one, how you are going to maintain a charge out log. Okay, so you keep a running record of borrowed file material. So the charge out log requires information such as the record description, the borrower's name, the charge out date, the due date for return, date actually written, maybe you return earlier, maybe you return late, and date for sending overdue notice, and also the new extended date. Okay, for example, you're supposed to return today, but you did not return, but you want to extend for another 1 week. Okay, and last one is using a follow-up file. So we have talked about charging out. You need to have a follow-up file. So why follow-up file is so important? Follow-up file is important because it can check on the borrowed records to ensure that they have returned by a specific time. So the requisition forms and outslip are prepared in duplicate. Again, you need to have 2 copies when you are charging out. Okay, so 1 copy goes into the main file, 1 goes into the follow-up file behind the due date of the record. Okay, and also this one we are also known as a tickler file. Okay, last but not least is how you are going to reserve the record. So The records department may receive advance request for record needed at the future date. Okay, so place a requisition form behind the appropriate date in the follow-up file. You place an outguide or requisition sheet in the main file showing the dates the records are needed. Okay, for example, the document is many of your employee in that department want to borrow that document. So in order for you, you want to use that one in next month. So you want to book or you want to reserve the document next month, so you need to place the outguide. Okay, outguide you have a pocket and pre-printed line. So when you give information that for the first week in January you want to borrow, so the other people or person cannot other employee cannot borrow or cannot take the document because you have booked, you have reserved earlier. Okay, so you use similar procedure for request already checked out. Yes, the same procedures from the first one, and then prepare and duplicate requisition form with a notation to send the materials to the net person upon return of the record. And then place one copy of the requisition behind the due date in the follow-up file. Attach a second copy to outguide placed in the main file. Okay, so we are going to continue electronic charge and follow-up record after this. Okay.